Welcome to the Behavior Reset Challenge. In the previous video, we looked at the hidden message beneath the behavior. Today, we're going to be looking at responding rather than reacting to a behavior episode. That is what you should do when a child is experiencing a behavior episode. The truth is, when a child has a behavior episode, that moment is not a teachable moment. So it's not a time to teach because the child is not going to be able to take in or learn anything at that point. Your focus at that point is to get the child to the point of calm. That's why it's important to emphasize the need to respond rather than react. So what's the difference between responding and reacting? When you react, that is when you yell, you shout, you hit. Basically, you're focusing on the behavior when you're reacting. On the other hand, when you're responding, you are not focusing on the behavior. You are focusing on what the child is trying to communicate and meeting the need of the child. So you're able to sit back and reflect and find out what the child is trying to communicate. Then you are able to meet the need. That's when you say you're responding. I like this analogy that I usually used to explain the difference between reacting and responding. You know the emergency services we have in the community, that is the police, fire, or ambulance. So let's take the firefighters, for example. If there's a fire incident somewhere and firefighters are called upon, what do? They respond to that emergency. When they get to the location of the emergency, their focus is not who caused the fire, what happened and all that. Their focus is to be able to put out the fire, maintain safety of life and property, and get people to safety. That's their focus. Then when they are able to put out the fire and keep everyone safe, the next thing they start investigating what caused the fire, what would have happened. Even if they identify that someone deliberately caused the fire, the person may be prosecuted and things like that. But the firefighters will focus on how could this have been prevented? Were there lapses in the system that encouraged such a thing to occur? Then what systems can we begin to put in place so that next time either the fire could be prevented or the damages could be reduced, or a system that will help them to be able to intervene in time. So you can see that that's the difference between responding and reacting. The firefighters are not reacting, they respond and they focus on getting people to safety, not what caused the problem. So the same thing for a child. Focus on responding, not you don't react. So how do you do this? The first thing is what we call co-regulation. What is co-regulation? Co-regulation simply means how you as a parent, how your ability to regulate your own emotions helps to communicate safety to your child, and your child is able to mirror that and they're able to regulate themselves. Children who have developmental challenges particularly, they tend to have challenges regulating their emotions. So one of the ways that you can help them is co-regulation. So when a parent or a caregiver is able to regulate their own emotion, they are able to communicate that safety. The child feels connected to them and the child is able to mirror that regulation. And that's why that is very important. So as a parent, you must learn to co-regulate with your child. That helps the child to be able to regulate their emotions. Remember that as a parent, you are part of the environment of your child. I remember what I said in the previous video. One of the triggers for behavioral challenges can be an environmental factor. So if you as a parent, you're part of the environment of your child. So that means that if you don't regulate your emotion, you can actually trigger the behavior or even worsen the behavior. But if you as a parent, you understand that you are part of the environment of your child and you are able to regulate yourself, that means you in turn create the right environment and suitable environment that helps your child to regulate their emotions. Another thing is that when a child is having a behavior episode, just be calm, be present and be calm. You don't need to say anything, okay? Be present. You can come down to the child's level. Just be calm. Also you can offer the child some, regulating materials. For example, do they have a favorite toy, comfort toy, or things that they like on a normal day? You can offer it to them. Your focus at that point in time is to just help the child to regulate. When the child is fully regulated, then we can now talk about, okay, how do we begin to teach the child. So that behavior episode just helps you to see the gaps, okay? Then another time when you see the gaps, then you can teach the child, but you don't teach the child while they are having that episode, okay? So that episode will help you to see maybe skill gaps, things that you need to teach the child on how to name their emotions as well. You teach them how to name their emotions, how they feel. If they were not able to do it at that period, after the episode, it's time to introduce things like feelings cards, things that will help them to be able to name their emotions. You can also teach them on how to, excuse themselves, maybe to their room, take a moment, by themselves. But it's very important that any teaching that you want to do should be before the behavior episode, because remember, the behavior episode is not a teachable moment. So anything that you have not taught or the child has not mastered before that episode, that time is not going to be a time they're going to master it. So any teaching about naming emotions, excusing themselves, maybe having a comfort toy, all those things, you can use maybe chats to be able to name their emotions or communicate how they're feeling. All that should be done outside of the behavior episode. So these are ways that you help a child to regulate their emotion. So I want you to try it out today. When your child acts out, I want you to think about the concept of co-regulation. So calm down, take a pause, don't react, and you can even do slow breathing. Slow breathing is something you can do. You can even teach your child that. So take a few breaths. Don't shout. Just allow your child, to co-regulate. So when you are calm, your child will be able to mirror that to your child. You can offer them a comfort toy and see how they go. After the episode, just run through the process and see any gaps, and then you know what to teach, okay? So were there gaps with your child naming their emotions? Were there gaps with your child, expressing themselves? If there are, then think about how can I begin to teach my child? What resources? Can I use pictures? Can I use flashcards to teach them how to name their emotion? Can I get a comfort toy? Can I teach them on how to go to their room or a safe space and regulate themselves? So tomorrow is the final day of the Behavior Reset Challenge, where we'll share more insights and then we conclude. I hope to see you then. Bye.